So this is a short little testimony of who I am, uh, why I am where I'm at. So I was born and raised in Northeast Ohio to uh, Ross and Diane Wetson. That's the paperwork name that I was given. Was Daniel Ross Wetson. Anyway, I was raised as an independent, fundamental, King James only Baptist. Very proud of that. I certainly was very proud of it. They teach you pride very, very early. Yet they'll stomp all over the LGBTQ for being proud of their sins. But a lot of closet sins, closet homosexuality that they don't talk about in these churches. Some are more against it than others. So I was conceived. I don't know. I was. I was. The enemy attacked me from the womb. And was they were the government was doing everything in their power to make me into a sadistic, satanic, Luciferian assassin type, a military brat, basically, someone that they could manipulate. They got me hating pedophiles right early in my age because, well, they were sending pedophiles after us. My parents did their best by homeschooling us, my siblings and I, for 8 out of 12 years. My older siblings might have got only 6 out of 12 because the first year, maybe 2 years, they were in a private Christian school, private. And a lot of abuse went on there just among the students in general because all the church is about is abuse. That's all the church as a whole is it's about trauma-based trauma, shame, and pleasure-based mind control. A religious facade for the state's manipulation of the soul so that they have access to it and to power their systems. Pretty much every president that's still alive has had their hands on my siblings and I. Some of them didn't because they weren't in office or, they weren't in that position yet to be able to do that. But pretty much every religious leader we ever met was used in our abuse, either sexually, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, or physically, and sometimes all the above. My dad would move from church to church based on the doctrine of adultery. If he found that they were committing adultery in that church, he'd move to another one. And if we moved based on something else, we would end up back at the other church every so often to visit the pastor or any of the elders that he thought were trustworthy. Come to find out, none of them were. Looking back over my memory, none of them were. My dad refused to meet their standards and a lot of times was kept out of eldership because he wouldn't join the lodge or the Jesuits. And him knowing all the corruption, he did a lot of research on, and he was trying to win the Baptist Church to what truth that he knew. None of them wanted to listen to him because they were a part of the government psyop that they were playing on our family. They play it on every family. It's not just us. They either um, they either Well, they did covert and overt operations on my dad, and sometimes he picked up on it, sometimes he didn't. Now, my mom taught my younger sister. I actually might have even taught my older siblings how to read from the script from the King James Bible, of course. I'd have to say that out of all of the Bibles, it's probably the best linguistic trainer for the English language. However, it's very occultic, very Masonic, because King James was a Freemason. He didn't know he studied demonology. He did all these things not so he could cast out devils, but so that he could control the devils and get the people to follow his demands and commands. That's the real reason he printed the Bible the way he did. It does not negate that the scriptures are found, that the word of Yah is still found in that volume of the scriptures, but it was very truncated. The names of the Father and the Son were changed and removed. Whole passages of the Apocrypha were removed after the first one did have a portion of the Apocrypha. There are at least 80 to 88 books in the original 1611 uh, Bible of the King James. But it was either the Baptists or the Pentecostals who decided to remove the Apocrypha because it would expose them for not really operating by the gifts of the Spirit, or that you didn't need or that the gifts of the Spirit were even available to us. That's a little bit of history. That's not necessarily my testimony perfectly, but so I was staunch King James only up until let's see here, about the age. I left Ohio about 2016 after my parents died. I was still staunch King James only, and I was trying to convince people of it, even among the Hebrew Roots movement and Torah observant. I was starting to walk away from the Baptist movement because I saw how hypocritical and stupid it was. But then I started picking up on the hypocrisies of Torah observant and Hebrews and Puritan types because they won't help the poor. They want to get you reintegrated into the system, the state. And anyway, back to when I was young. So I was being raped. I was being molested by pastors and elders behind my parents' back, and as well as my earthly father's Jesuit handler through the family business. He was trafficking me out to high heads of state, all the way up to the Crown of England and the Vatican. He was definitely a Jesuit, and presidents and governors, senators, both Republican and Democrat, have had their way with me in one way or another. I know the Clintons did. I know that Trump did before he was president, of course, and mainly through his daughter. Now, he saw it as a high honor to give me his daughter the way he did, but it was still abuse, both for her and I, and neither of us enjoyed it. We knew it was wrong, and we were both drugged beyond our ability to resist, and we were being manipulated through technology. Even back then, they had stuff in us that they could stimulate certain parts of our body against our will. And that was when I was between 11 and shoot, it might have been as far back as when the Clintons had a hold of us at a few times. As far back as 5 years old. Uh, I don't care what president you're gonna look to in history. They've all been perverts. They've all had the spirit of Osiris conjured up in them, and that would be Gilgamesh. That'd be Nimrod. As far back as before the flood of Noah, that same spirit of Abaddon is conjured up into the President of the United States of America. There's no such thing as a true follower of Christ functioning in the office of the presidency of any country, not even the kings of any country. Anyone who wants to be a secular ruler over a country is going to be found to be demonized. Shalom, Hepzibah. Messiah, Joshua, is our only hope. Yahuwah. And when I was in the deepest fight, like the first video on my about my testimony, when they had me almost dead after shooting me in the back and running me over with a truck, I cried out to Yahuwah. I remember it. He allows me to remember these things. I did not cry out to Jesus. I did not cry out to Jehovah. I cried out to Yahuwah and Yahusha. And that's when he started to do the transformation to teach me the ways of his people. We are first and foremost spiritual through the blood of Messiah. But there is a double blessing for the physical seed of Abraham that comes to Messiah, and a double curse if we do not, and if we reject Messiah. Now, that part of my memory was wiped by the government when they found that I was still alive. They pumped me full of drugs, they pumped me full of steroids, they pumped me full of technology to cause me to forget and to place me under their manipulative control. And there's still somewhat of that control in my system. Not just technological, but biological agents that they use to manipulate me. And I'll say things, and then afterwards, after I say it, I'm like, that don't sound like Messiah there. And people have been led astray, and I've had to correct myself. But we're all everyone in this country, especially the United States, we're all under a mind control psyop program. Especially when we're trying to find our Heavenly Father. They place us in churches, they place us in religious sects of any religion that fits their agenda to cause war and divide and conquer mankind and to maintain control over humanity and the rest of creation through humanity. And so probably around between 3 and 5 years old, I accepted Messiah as my savior. I didn't necessarily consciously know him as Yahusha yet. I didn't really cry out to him by name. I just cried out my spirit to the Most High. I didn't cry out. When I was crying out to him, I don't remember saying any name. I just knew that I had an evil attachment in my soul and spirit, and it was driving me to do things I didn't want to do. And I knew that they were wrong, that they were evil. And at that time, it was since I was so young, it was more like what was the it was incest was the main spirit that tormented me and still tries to reclaim me in some ways. But since I'm away from my family, that spirit has lost a lot of control over me. Every form of sexual perversion that you can think of, that's what the enemy was trying to condition me to become. He wanted me to become the super sexual trans person that could be. They were trying to condition me to be at least one of the candidates for the man of perdition, the final vessel for Abaddon when he comes out of the pit altogether. And so they were doing all of these trauma-based mind control techniques on me through men, through women, through children, and other creatures, seducing me, and one that was attached to me would seduce them. And so when I was dying in the field, as they were running me over, I cried out to Yahuwah. That's when I was 12 years old. Now, at 8 years old, Father called me and said, "I want you to lead my people back to the covenant." Back then, I wasn't 100% understanding it. I says, "Oh, you mean you want me to go to all the Baptist churches and tell them that they need to return to your..." And this is after he showed me his weekly Sabbath, the seventh day, the solar Sabbath first. He said, "No, that's not my people, but my people are scattered in some of those churches." And later on, he said, "The church has never been my body, but my body is scattered. My people are scattered among them, and they need to be called out of Babylon." And Babylon includes the church, every denomination of her, even assemblies that claim to follow Torah that don't really, because they still attach themselves to secular government structures. And even, I mean, whether they call themselves Hebrew roots or not, even the groups that build separate communities like little boroughs in towns, they're attached to secular government. They need to come out of the cities. They need to come out and be in the streets first as the Father leads, and some people he leads out into the wilderness right away. You don't follow a man into the wilderness to find Messiah. If you don't have Messiah in you, guiding you and leading you, then you're not going to find him in the wilderness any more than you would accepting him where you are. He meets you where you are and leads you to where he knows you're best suited because he created you. So at 8 years old, he said, "I want you to lead my people back to the covenant." At 12 years old, he said, "You're going to be on the streets ministering to people on the streets." Both times I jumped at it. I'm like, "Yeah, that's fun." But at 8 years old, I'm like, was it 8 or 10 years old? At 10 years old, he was making it very clear that he wanted me to affirm what I had been told at 8 years old. And I was like, "Come back to me when I'm grown." And he says, "Please don't say that, son." 4 times he affirmed, "Don't say that, son." And then he allowed me to go on my way and learn the hard way that had I just submitted right then and there, he had been my covering. More than likely, my parents would have come along with me and helped me on the subject. But I was afraid to, just like anyone he calls. So finally, at 28 years old, I'm falling apart. My parents had just died. I'm in extreme pain, and I don't know why. And he used a job down in Big Bend National Park in the Kesos Basin in Texas to get me away from home for the first time as a housekeeper taking care of their cabins. And when I wanted to go up for a feast of Yahuwah in Portland, Oregon, I wanted to try to go there and then come back. And they said, "No, if you leave, you leave." So I was like, "I'll leave." Before I could get to Portland, the contact in Portland had changed over and started calling me a demon-possessed person. And he himself had turned himself over to fornication in some way because he was trying to escape the Baptist church as well. But they sent in one of their Jezebels to hook him back in, and it worked. And he started a new sect of Hebrew roots. But there's nothing wrong with some of the people that are Hebrew roots. They just need to separate the mindset of this world from what they're trying to teach. You cannot fit true worship of our Messiah in with society. It does not fit in any facet of it, either governing, uh, educational, medicinal, law enforcement, or military. None of it fits in a true faith-based community. And he said that he would keep us scattered until the man of perdition is exposed, and then he returns and regathers us. That's why all these gatherings of people that are trying to follow Messiah are failing. It's not that they're not trying to do a good thing, it's just not the perfect timing yet. That's why I do not encourage people to come and follow Isaac and I and do exactly the same thing in other words, you do it as the Father leads you. And don't come looking for us, because we're not the answer. We're only a portion of his body, and we're not perfectly cleansed enough to be gathered together. Because the moment you bring his people back together, before he has cleansed us and purged us of our iniquity and of our backsliding, all it's going to do is lead to another group of his people backsliding. He has to take care of us each as individuals, and sometimes in groups up to 4 or 5 people. In Scripture, it says groups no more than 2 or 3 in the latter days. 1 here, 2 here, 3 there. That's what he said in these latter days. We're not going to have giant groups of people. Are you ready to be alone? Now he talks about the 144,000, and in the King James and many translations it says that they're virgins. They're chaste. Virgin insinuates they may not, that there's probably no marriage, but chaste, on the other hand, you might be a male, you might be a husband and a wife, but you're not going to bed every night together in regards to the intimacy, the physical intimacy. It becomes a spiritual task of the righteous to keep themselves pure physically so that they may heal internally more effectively. And this is what Father's shown me through my experience thus far. And I've got to get going. Someone's trying to, well, I can call that person back. Um, so in 2016 begins my journey away from my earthly family. I'm in and out of temporary housing up until after 2019. Actually, right after the pandemic is when I stopped seeking shelter under a roof as much. We still ended up underneath a roof a couple of times after that for like 2 weeks at a time. But most of them require identification now, so we're barred from any of it. We've got to find places out of sight, out of mind to just sleep at night and pack up at the end of the evening and at the end of the night. It'd be awesome if I could be out in the wilderness right now, but that's not his purpose right now. Isaac and I are treading the lands that will soon be judged. We're the last witness to them. And hopefully some of them are awakened and converted enough to come out before it's too late. Those that are physically judged of Yah's people, chastened by Yah through the same trials and tribulations the world's going to go through that'll damn them for all eternity, they'll physically be killed but saved. Their soul, spirit will be saved. But we're here to warn his people mainly, that they might escape such trials, if possible. If not, they'll just be strengthened to go through it and be purged. And so in Missoula, I started to fall into another trafficking ring masquerading as an assembly of believers. And they were going to put me into a high up position and all this stuff. And they wanted to do their satanic rituals on me sexually. The father pulled me out before it was too late. Isaac was brought in to pull me out of it. And now him and I are learning what it means to be patient with each other, learning to lead by example where we're able to help each other grow. And everything father said would happen to me to me when I was a child is happening to me. I'm going all over the country right now, but he says it's going to expand to the rest of the world too. And over the internet it does that, but I'm sure it's also talking about it physically. So probably end up over in the Holy Land where it's under bondage to physical, fleshly minded men who think themselves to be the righteous seed of Abraham. Never minding that that they're probably even more wicked than the most wicked city here in the United States. The rotten fruit think they have right to the Holy Land. And during the 1,000-year reign, Yaroshel is entrusted with half of the land of the the half of the earth mass of land, and the new Jerusalem is in the middle of the earth on Mount Zion, where the actual main spring is on earth. And however that plays out, wherever I'm incorrect, Father will correct me on that when the time is right. But this is what I understand currently to be the case, the understanding. Because everything spiritual must manifest in a physical manner, and there is a physical, literal application for everything that is allegorical, which means parable. It means it's in the spirit first, and then in the physical. And then at the end of the 1,000-year reign, we have the whole earth to populate, which is already going to be populated. Enough people will be there to populate it, but the whole earth is turned over to the nation. And every man, woman, and child that is born again of the Spirit through Messiah and receiving of the leaves and the fruit of the tree of life will become grafted into the house of Yaroshel. And the whole earth will be under the stewardship of Yaroshel. I'm beginning to refuse to say Israel because Israel literally translates and transliterates out to be Isis, Ra, and El. It's an acronym. It's not even a name. And then, of course, they have the six-pointed star, which is Remphan, which is the devil. It's also the five-pointed star if you look at it through a 3D rendition of it. Certain. So the devil has a six-pointed and a five-pointed star appointed to him because he was the head worship angel who built huge cathedral-type buildings, supposedly, for the worship of our Heavenly Father, for the angels to sing in. So it's no wonder that the false religions want to build huge cathedrals that make the voices of men and angels sound glorious, but in reality are binding them to a false sense of worship and reality and beauty. So more of my testimony will come out later. I believe it's about time for me to let go of you for now. And shalom, Yahaya Baruch, and keep you, lift his countenance upon you, and give you shalom as you seek to worship and follow him and love him with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind with all of your strength, in spirit and in truth, and to love your neighbor as yourself as he gave us commandment and left us with an example in Messiah. You all have a blessed Baruch Barakah day. Dawid signing out.